Hello and welcome to my channel. My name's Siobhan and on the internet I'm talking about my direct experience of child sexual abuse. The reason I'm doing that is to raise awareness of this issue from a survivor's point of view, and also because there's a very real possibility that someone who's watching or will watch has been abused as a child and hasn't been able to tell anybody yet. So to that person, I just want to say that you have nothing to be ashamed of and you deserve to seek support for whatever may have happened. The first time I appeared on video was in 2008 with Fixers, and they're a national charity who give young people the opportunity to create videos about social issues that are important to them. Because I was 17 at the time, I had to have my face blacked out and my voice was pitch bended to protect my identity. So as soon as I turned 18, I lifted that anonymity. I wanted to be seen because for me it represents a bit of a contradiction to on the one hand say, if you've been sexually abused you have nothing to be ashamed of, but on the other hand to keep my own name and face private. Also, during the court process I had to give evidence via video link. I also submitted a witness statement with video in which I went into graphic detail about what had happened. So after that whole ordeal, the thought of appearing and being visible didn't really scare me anymore. Today I'm talking about the court process, so everything that happened from the moment of disclosure to the conclusion of the trial. I was convinced for the longest time that I would never tell anybody. I was afraid that if I did tell somebody that I would go to prison. I was also very afraid of how my family would react. I've done another video, by the way, on more of the specific reasons why I personally found it difficult to tell someone. I was sexually abused by my father from the age of 6 or 7 or 8 until age 15. I don't remember specifically what age I was when it started. When I did manage to tell my mum, the police were called and the investigation started. At first, 2 police officers arrived to ask some initial questions and establish that an actual crime had taken place. They arrived within hours of me disclosing, keeping in mind that this was now 7 AM, I think it was on Christmas Day. After that, I was invited to go to a police station, the local police station in London, where I was staying with my mum at the time, to record a video interview, which would later be used in court as my evidence. The abuser was arrested 2 weeks later and then quickly released on bail. During this time, I stayed in London so as to avoid contact. After that, we didn't hear for months. It was about 6 months before we found out that he would be standing trial. In order for a case to go to court, the legal system has to be satisfied, firstly, that there's enough evidence to possibly result in a conviction, and secondly, that the accused person represents a threat to the public. The court date was arranged nearly a year from when I first gave video evidence. It was then delayed by 5 months. I don't know why. So in total, from the moment of disclosure is about a year and a half until the trial. That time was pretty difficult for me because I felt very overwhelmed at suddenly having to tell lots of different people things that I thought until that point I would never tell anybody at all. I also changed schools in that time, so that was another layer of upheaval and coming to terms with the seriousness of what had happened. Which kind of involved replaying everything and questioning everything. So that was a very stressful time for me. My father stood trial at Southampton Crown Court in March 2007. Although the whole trial lasted 5 days, I was only required to attend on the first. The rest of the days consisted of my family members telling the court whether they believed abuse was happening. On my day, my video evidence was shown that I had recorded shortly after first disclosing, and then the defence barrister cross-examined me based on what I had said. Because I was underage, I wasn't required to stand in the main courtroom and I had a separate room, and I was communicating to the judge and the barrister via video link. I could only see them, I couldn't see the jury or the abuser. The cross-examination was the worst part of the whole ordeal for me. I can understand why so many young people find the court process completely unbearable. In fact, there are cases where young victims commit suicide because they find it that re-traumatizing. The barrister's job, of course, is to discredit your story and make out that you're lying and you made the whole thing up. That's what he's there to do. Now, the abuse experience itself involves such a denial of the victim's reality and undermining of their emotional boundaries. So, for me, the cross-examination was a bit of a reinforcement of that, and it just brought a lot up for me. Abuse is a confusing and distorting experience, suffice to say, and it really makes you question whether you deserve to be upset because you feel responsible as a child. You feel like it's your fault that the abuse is happening, so then what right do you have to be upset about it? So when you've got some scary adult person talking down to you and, you know, doing all the body language and kind of condescending you like this and talking to you in a very sort of authoritarian voice, it is terribly upsetting. Yeah, it is. And it's wrong at its core, because you know what happened and the abuser knows what happened. And at the time, I remember wishing I could just take them all back and make them watch. I wish there was some concrete way to show everyone in the courtroom what had happened, to show them the truth. The court case also divided my family into those who supported and believed me and those who tried to deny that the abuse could have happened. I think those people will have to live with that decision. It's a decision which they've surely realised by now was the wrong one, particularly as they've presumably been looking me up online since, like every so often, and would have seen all the stuff that I'm doing. And, you know, frankly, that's not what someone would do if they made the whole thing up. You know, the idea would be to lie low, right? Not to start a YouTube channel about their experiences. I didn't have any contact with anybody who tried to minimise the gravity of what he had done or deny it completely, and I've had no contact since then, and it's been important for my recovery to cut those people out, which is something I'll talk about in another video. On the last day of the trial, the jury left to make a decision, and they came back with a unanimously guilty verdict. I wasn't there when the verdict was announced, but when I found out, I just felt numb. I felt nothing. Eventually, I felt relieved that the whole thing was over. The sentencing took place 6 weeks later, and I decided to attend in person, so I sat in the public gallery and I was there with the abuser in the room. I was advised not to attend because there were concerns that this would make the judge limit the sentence that he had in mind, as if it would prove somehow that because I'm there, then I've not been badly affected by it, therefore to let the abuser off the hook. Even though he'd just taken 6 weeks, the judge, to deliberate on how long the sentence should be. So that didn't happen. It was difficult for me to sit there and listen to the defence barrister tell the judge how my father deserved a lenient sentence based on his age and previous good character. Firstly, I'm not sure what age has to do with anything. And secondly, previous good character, I assume that means no previous convictions. And, you know, if they knew who my father was in life, they would know about all the other crimes he committed, as well as abusing me, you know, which is including and not limited to physically abusing my brothers and denying their basic needs. However, these things will never be proven. Child abuse cases remain very difficult to prove because it often comes down to one person's word against the other. It's also tremendously difficult for a young person to disclose the full facts of the situation first time round. Like, I've remembered loads of stuff since then and I can't go back and tell them that now. It can take years for a person to feel ready to tell anybody, let alone to make a report to the police. So when adult survivors do try to bring a case against the person who abused them when they were little, it's usually referred to as historical abuse. Historical, even though the impact and effects of the abuse are still very much in the adult survivor's reality. I therefore find that language a bit problematic and a bit dismissive. I'm sometimes asked about how getting a guilty conviction has affected my recovery. Now, I can only speak coming from a point where I know what happened. I can't know for sure how I would have felt in the alternative. But what I will say is that although I feel grateful to be one of the lucky ones who gets a conviction, I don't think it's had a profound effect on my recovery. Firstly, the sentence wasn't very long. It was 3 years, then let out after half that time on good behaviour. Secondly, for me, the fact of reporting to the police was more important than the outcome. I made the decision to expose what he had done. I made the decision to stand up for myself, and that's all I could do. The only part I control in this process is the decision to report and what I actually say. After that, it's up to them. I can't control whether a bunch of strangers are going to back me up. I can't control whether they're going to believe the truth. I can only stand up and speak it, which is what I did. I can only try to seek some sort of justice in a fundamentally flawed system. And wherever he is now, he has to live out his days marinating in the consequences of all his life decisions, like we all do. And I'm pretty happy with mine. So if you like this video and think that it's an important subject, then please like, share, subscribe. I'm trying to reach as many people as possible, so hopefully I will see you again next Monday.